British Columbia could well be part of the United States, and Canada would not stretch from coast to coast to coast. I didn't know any of this history while growing up, just that the view from our yard was spectacular, and that the monument to the chief overlooking the river and the CNR station was formidable and mysterious. My dad, Dr. Kenneth Edwards, was the only physician in the area, and he got to make the rules in St. Bartholomew's Hospital, which was a few minutes' walk from our home. Much later, I heard that he made a rule immediately after he started work at the old Anglican hospital. Everyone got to come in and leave through the front door. Up to that point, Indigenous people had to come in through a side entrance, even though they were the overwhelming majority in the area and had lived there much longer. I also learned from my brother David that Dad sometimes scaled cliffs dangling by a rope to treat victims of car crashes. I marvel at the thought, as he was no great athlete. After a dozen years there, we moved to Windsor, Ontario. You can be a doctor in a place like Lytton for only so long. Dad's responsibilities were 24/7 and relentless. He had delivered almost every kid at Lytton Elementary who was younger than me, and he pronounced their relatives dead when their time came, often through car accidents. In a place that size, many had been his friends as well as his patients, and I know that hurt him. This was before Canada had universal health care, and Dad loved it when Indigenous people would show up at the door of our house to pay him in freshly caught fish. Perhaps that's why, to this day, I love the taste of salmon. At the end of a hectic day, Dad would bunker himself away in his den, relaxing with a beer and a book, 2 closed doors away from us kids and the TV, which he dismissed as the idiot box. He was surrounded by books in his den, and I sometimes felt I was competing with them for his attention. Perhaps that's why I became a writer. Our mother, Winona Edwards, was the first real writer I knew, although I'm sure she was too modest to think of herself as one. She influenced me enormously. She loved reading as much as my father, and her world shone brightly whenever Agatha Christie published a new mystery. They both loved the British philosopher Bertrand Russell, but Agatha Christie was Mom's own special favorite. A comment from Christie I'll never forget was about the moment she felt she had turned professional. Christie said that a real writer writes even when you don't want to. Without Mom's influence, this book would never have been written. The older I get, the more blessed I feel to have spent my first dozen years in the shadow of Jackass Mountain, a 2-kilometer-tall peak to the south. In a community that wasn't just the center of my universe, but the center of countless universes for generations before and after me, the name typified the local sense of humor, fitting for a place where anything that endures is bound to be loved, but nothing is really precious. Mom and Dad raised me and my 3 siblings, Jim, David, and Melanie, in a happy and defiant little cocoon. I never really saw limits. In the Lytton of my childhood, we felt we could see forever and be anything we pretended and aspired to be. I have since learned that not everyone had it so good. We were unaware as children of the horrors that existed for other children who were starting their lives nearby. We almost never saw any kids from St. George's Residential School set on farmland just 4 kilometers from my home. We never visited or were invited to visit St. George's. Lytton was the center of their universe, too, but the view for them was often very different. The community now known as Lytton was at the center of the Nlaka'pamux universe long before the settlement on their territory was named after a much-ridiculed British writer, who was also a senior official in British Columbia's 19th-century colonial government. Tiny, confident Lytton once aspired to be the provincial capital, but mostly it has been a place of refuge and countless new beginnings and fresh starts.